All right, hello everybody. Another Leetcode today. I've actually gone and changed it up how we're going to be doing these ones from now on, because I went and did this before recording. But today's Leetcode was Leetcode 36, valid Sudoku, and this one's really interesting because it's actually you're just kind of playing by the rules of the Sudoku game. And for those of you who know it, because I didn't actually know how to play Sudoku. I don't know if that's embarrassing or shameful or whatever, but I that's facts. I didn't know, and it actually led to the first error in my code, but that's fine. We'll get to that. So essentially, you can't have a number of reoccurring in rows or columns or in any of these 3 by 3 little grids. So it's pretty much just 9 grids, 9 rows, 9 columns. You have to check all of them, and it's presented in this array. Now, this array, it's actually not that big of a deal, the array, because it's really simple to understand. And I actually got this straight away, which I was really happy with. I was meant to copy that. Yeah, the array is actually really simple. And if you look at it like this, it's literally, these are the rows, and then they line up such, right? So you've got 2 sets of arrays, essentially just a massive array of arrays, and that's the rows, and you can interact with that pretty easily. So this was my code that I ended up coming up with, and now this is a pretty roundabout method, as I figure out later. But I actually didn't know that the rules of Sudoku were that you had to confirm that there were no numbers in the 3 by 3 grids. I thought it was only in the columns. So that was my first mistake. So I managed to get code running that actually worked pretty well. I'm pretty proud of it. Because I actually managed to use JavaScript features as well in this one, which was really nice, but I digress. It actually runs pretty quick, and it checks all the columns, and it works properly. The only issue is when you submit, it gets to a point where there's some in the cubes that should return a false, and it doesn't do that because I didn't account for that at all in my initial plan. But essentially, my code, pretty simple. It pretty much just states a boolean to start with, and if this boolean ever changes, it means it worked. But we go through the rows, we check if the row, we filter out the little dot placeholders, and then we check if the rows are the same length as the set operator. And if you use set, it pretty much just removes all recurring values and makes it into a single value. So it just makes it that it's all unique symbols in the set. And it's really good that I used that because it's actually the intended JavaScript built-in function that we were supposed to use for this problem. So I'm really happy that I got that. And I had actually just learned how to do this kind of thing just beforehand by doing my JavaScript quiz that I made in GPT-4. So I was pretty proud of that. So you go through, you get your row filters, and then you check each row array because that's pretty easy. And you just check if it has duplicate occurring symbols. And I filtered to get rid of the dots because that just messed with things, and who cares. So then if that picked up as a different length, then it means there's a different amount of symbols, which means there's definitely a duplicate. After that, you then do the columns, and the column I pretty much did a similar thing, except for I constructed the whole column array and then would do the thing after. So I ran through each column on the row, and then after I got the full column array, I would check it for duplicates and then run it through. So it's pretty much the same process. The only thing different was that I would assemble the array myself, and then I would return duplicate. So as I told you, once you submit that, eventually there's an error where it runs into the old problem with it catching on to there being, a grid that didn't work. So then I did a lot of research, and by a lot of research, I mean a lot. I think I spent about 6 hours because I ended up going down this rabbit hole. But if you guys don't know, like the guy who made this roadmap, he's got a YouTube channel, and his name's Neatcode on YouTube. This guy's actually, he does solid stuff. He does really good stuff, and I've been following his roadmap. It's pretty sick. And his video tutorial is actually really great too. This was my thinking board. I thought I'd start doing this just because thinking's pretty helpful. You can see how basic I am. But yeah, hopefully my handwriting picks up the more I do this. But I just figured it would be nice to start writing out my thinking so that I can actually maybe progress on it, maybe make it more sophisticated in some sort of way. But when you actually change this, so this code is so simple, and all it does is essentially sets 3 sets, and it runs through a nested loop. And I know avoid less nested loops like the plague, but we actually, when I thought about it, right, like this one has a predefined sort of size. So you don't really run into the issue where as it increments into higher and higher amounts in the arrays, you don't run into that issue of it like compounding and going like through the roof. So you always have the same amount of iterations, which is pretty sick. So you can actually use a nested loop on this one, and all the actual solutions were using nested loops as well. But essentially, the solution that we ended up coming up with was that you set 3 sets, and you set this each time for each row so that it resets with new values. I'm not too sure why. I'm still working on that. And then it's pretty much the same thing. You get the row value, the column value, using the kind of coordinates that are the indices of the arrays. And then because with this for loop, this is changing the iterations of the row, because you do the row and then you can iterate a bunch of times inside of the row and use the row indice to capture all the indices inside of that row for your columns. So it's a bit complicated, but if you like actually do the process, it makes a bit of sense. Now this part doesn't, so he explains it really well in his video, so I'm not going to go into it, but this is essentially how you make the grid detector function. It makes sense, but yeah, I'm not going to get into it. He's got a much better video, so if you want to watch his, it's just valid Sudoku, Leetcode 36 Python at Neatcode, or you can check through his roadmap. But he's a legend. He explains it really well in this video. But essentially, you can use divisions and integer divisions to get these values up here. So 0 when you divide by 3, because it's essentially a 3x3 grid. So if you divide 3 by 2 and you use the math floor, which I've got math floor here, it pretty much rounds it down to 0. So then you have that 0 grid, so then you know it's up in this grid essentially. But this solution that I've actually followed doesn't use the same method. It comes out to different numbers. So I was actually still in the process of trying to figure out why that's happened, but I don't know. So then you just go through, you do some basic checks, and then you check with the set if it exists, and if it exists, then you return the false. So it does a few simple checks, and it looks so simple once you get this concept down with the grids. And also it's just understanding how to interact with the different elements in the arrays that are given to you for the board. If you can do all that properly, then it's such an easy question. But yeah, it's just getting your thinking around that. But I ended up watching so many, like if you haven't seen the Prime Time, like this guy's a programmer as well. He just streams and stuff, and he talks about programming stuff. So I think it's been pretty cool. I've been having a blast listening to him today. But yeah, no, so that's it from me. Another Leetcode down, number 36. I'm going to say this was an L. I didn't actually manage to finish this one. I'm a bit disappointed because I did get halfway through and I gave it a really good crack, but that's just, it is what it is. So I'll see you later, guys. Thanks for clocking in. I'll catch you in the next one.